Welcome again, everyone, to this year's Crammer, especially to those who were not able to join us yesterday. A year's worth of legal content, case law, and highlights in bite-sized sessions. That's what's in store for you this week, the planet's best legal conference. In recognition that business has been extremely hard for many in the past few months, don't forget that we are showcasing videos on our platform and website of those who have shared their unique, challenging, or unusual stories. In this way, we hope that they and the audience can use the Crammer platform to promote and support them and or collaborate, network and learn from a variety of different experiences and hardships. Today's session, we'll be looking at the unusual workplace. But before we do that and introduce the speakers, let's get a wrap of what happened yesterday with Jenny in her unusual time session. Jenny.
Morning, thanks, Darren. Yes, it's good to see so many people again today. I think we had a great day yesterday. Unusual times, they certainly are. And I think we took you from a wine farm in Stellenbosch to a barbershop in Pretoria, where we could share our knowledge with you. We managed to get a lot of really important messages through to you, including the fact that small businesses cannot escape competition issues, the constitutionality of the COVID regulations. We gave you a fantastic cheat sheet to help you to navigate your copyright ownership in the event that you get design agencies to do particular designs for you. And we also explained to you about partially valid patents and what it's like to try and enforce those and the difficulty associated with them. I think one of the strongest messages that came out yesterday was that we've somehow managed to adapt. We've managed to adapt the way we work, including our courts. The fact that institutions that ordinarily would have been very paper heavy and were reliant on paper files, which often led to a lot of frustrations in practice, have now learned to develop an online system, just shows that we are all capable of adapting to changing the way we view the world and the way we view our business and the way we work. We had two very inspirational stories from clients of ours. One of them was Rainer van Wyk from Lekkerslaap, who explained to us how hard it's been in the tourism industry to just continue doing what you know best. And then we also had a very good clip from Danielle van Wyk from Pekka Foods, who explained to us that COVID almost killed her business until she decided to take it by the horns and turn it around and make it into a really, really profitable and wonderful business where she could train people, get them back in the kitchen and cooking again. I'm sure that what you will get out of today's will be as inspiring, and I wish all of you the best of luck, and we'll see you again on Friday. Thanks, Darren, over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Jenny. I certainly enjoyed that yesterday. I don't know why it was Lekkerslaap at the end, because gee, I was wide awake throughout. So today I'm joined by Adrian Davidson, a thought leader, architect and designer who owns Savile Architects and Designs, the driving force behind the Workplace Survey 2020, which has been published for the first time today. A link will be provided to you at the end of the panel talk. Thanks to those who spent the time completing the survey. Secondly, Leon van der Westhuizen, who's a master cognitive coach with a particular interest in disruptive change and the influence it has on people within business. He focuses on Industry 4.0, clever in the workplace strategies to achieve agile and sustainable people futures within successful business models. From Adams & Adams, I'm joined by Liti Kamata, who's no stranger to Crammer fans, I might add, having emceed this on numerous occasions, and takes her place on the panel as a partner in the firm focusing on intellectual property commercialization and innovation. Aslam Patel and Tandeka Mklongo complete the lineup. They are both associates in our employment law department and legal experts on workplace management, conflicts, and structuring. As you expect, with this type of topic, there are a complete range of topics that we expect to cover. These are included on the agenda, so I'm not going to read them all out. But we do this through a pre-recorded panel discussion to ensure a reliable feed for you. However, I must say, unfortunately, there's a parental guidance warning and apologies on the quality of some of the aspects of the video. However, those are the visual aspects, I might add. We do hope that the content will be very worthwhile. I certainly enjoyed the discussion. Please enter your questions and comments in the chat box alongside. and we will deal with them afterwards in about 45 minutes.
Adrian, your business is involved in helping organizations prepare for the future of work. In June, you went out and did a survey during hard lockdown on trends and what might happen in this work from home environment. You redid that survey with the help of Adams and Adams about a week or so ago, and have published a second white paper on this subject. Can you just give us some high-level takeaways on, first of all, why the survey, how it all came about, why did you do it? And secondly, what are we finding? And has there been a change from the first survey to the second survey?
Yeah, so it was interesting. We've been working with companies for the better part of 10 years, trying to prepare them for a new way of work, for them to look at their real estate, how they're looking real estate, and how they're working. And we've worked with companies that have embraced sort of agile work. But we noticed when the lockdown happened, we saw an opportunity that was sort of unprecedented, where everybody had been in this giant forced work from home experiment. And seeing that opportunity, we decided, well, let's get some information. Let's see how it's working out for everybody. And we put out the survey, and it was really interesting to see the results that came back out of that survey. It was incredible how mostly positive the results were. We would say that sort of 80% of the respondents found that they preferred working from home than working from the office. But I need to state that was only for certain tasks. So for focus work, very, very, very positive results. But for working in collaboration, less positive concerns around culture. But what has been incredible is to see how quickly companies have adapted. From a technology point of view, it just showed how ready we all were to embrace this new way of working remotely. The tools have always been there. I kind of call it before bandwidth, BB, and after bandwidth. So there's also a bit of serendipity in the fact that all our suburbs had been dug up the last 2-3 years, which we moaned about. But thank goodness for that, because if that hadn't happened, I think it would have been quite a different story if we just hadn't had this technology at our fingertips that was sitting there, kind of only being used at 10%. Now we're finding is how incredibly prepared we really were. Obviously, there have been glitches with certain people, but for the most part, I think the experience for most companies has been surprising. So much so that we have companies that we're talking to who are rethinking real estate completely. What is the need for real estate? What is the function of real estate? So I think what's interesting is that everybody's been through this cold shower of jumping into this new world, which they probably would have ended up going to anyway. And we were always forecasting by 2030, we used to say to our clients, this is where you're going to be. It's just been accelerated. So we kind of call it the great acceleration of work. And that's really what's happened, is we've just accelerated an inevitable process that was going to happen anyway. We've just now had to work and learn really, really quickly. But I think there's exciting times. But what it does do is it poses a lot of questions and a lot of concerns companies have as to how do they take this forward? How do they maximize, make the most out of it? And how do they create a new way within their organization to deal with many factors, from legal issues to operational issues to emotional issues? We talk about, in our world, we talk about the 3 Bs, which is bricks, which is your physical environment, bytes, which is technology and behavior. And you really need to address all 3 of them. And the bricks and bytes, I think, are probably the easiest to deal with. Unfortunately, that sits in my world. The behavior, with the soft, squidgy things, which is us as humans, that's the tougher part. And thank goodness that's a problem that Leon's got to deal with.
Leon, we'll get to you in a second. But before we do that, Leon does talk about the behavioral aspects and coping, and how to, get people skilled up, and what does the future employee and employer look like from a behavioral concept point of view. But I want to now just go back just quickly to, you touched on legal. We've got Aslam sitting on the far end there. Aslam, I want to talk about the Basic Conditions of Employment Act is set up this concept of a place of work. Can you tell us a bit about this place of work, and does it sit well in this new environment potentially?
Darren, as you are aware, from as well as from when I'm alive, or probably from when you are alive, or whoever is alive in the last 100 years going back, we understand a workplace to be me waking up in the morning, jumping into a car and going to work at some office or some plant or some factory. That was regarded as our traditional workplace. And obviously we had traditional contracts of employment and policies that were in place in order to regulate the traditional workplace. Now, as Adrian has mentioned, there's a great acceleration which has now taken place, where we foresaw that we would move to the remote working in possibly 10 or 15 years' time, but that is happening now. Now, although people might be for it or people might be against it, but the great acceleration is here. Is our labor laws also in place can the labor laws accelerate at that pace as well to adapt for this new environment? Now, in terms of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, there is a requirement that needs your workplace to be stated in your contract of employment. So there would be an address for where you're reporting to work and so forth. And it's common in employment contracts that it's stated in there that an employer may require an employee to move places of work depending on the employer's operational requirements and so forth. And with it, obviously, come specific work hours. Then with it, there's specific benefits that people are entitled to in terms of a contract of employment. And all of that was designed basically to cater for the traditional workplace. Now that we are moving, it's very easy to say, well, we're all working from home. But you've got to consider all of these. Are they tied up into it in a terms and conditions of employment? Are they a policy? Do my employees want to work from home? Is there a union presence at the workplace? How do I go about amending all of these terms and conditions of employment? I can't wake up in the morning and say, well, we're all working from home tomorrow for the rest of the future. Well, it doesn't work that way. We need to consult. You need to see whether employees are amenable to certain situations. Can you work from home? What is your capacity from working from home? What is your facilities from working from home? And so forth. And then try to get the employees buy-in to say, okay, we've got a percentage of employees that want to work from home, a percentage of employees that don't want to work from home. Based on that, you'd be able to understand how easy it would be to get employees buy-ins and whether you need to then obviously cut down on office space and so forth. If you cannot get employees buy-ins, then it's obviously an operational requirement where a majority of your employees want to work from home, then obviously you can, it's going to be tricky, but you can then, based on your operational requirements, to say that 80% of us are working from home. Operationally, we do not need an office. And in like day, or if you want to report to the office, there's going to be no work at the office. There will be no office. So your job is redundant. You're going to have to work from home. And then obviously you can go certain routes in terms of labor law, with operational requirements, retrenchment routes, and so forth.
Okay, we don't want to go there. We don't want to go there.
We don't want to go there. That's what employers should actually try to avoid and try to get employees buy-ins. You know, it will be easy to get their buy-ins, especially in a situation where we are now, where people want to work from home. People are going to work from home.
No, that's interesting. I mean, coming back to the survey quickly, I mean, a lot of it shows that actually very few firms have actually taken some measures of cutting down staff and maybe reduced pay. A lot of people, some firms have actually increased pay during this period. So there has been a period of flux. But 90% of people, what you're saying, 90% of people, 90% of people want to work from home or have a combination of both. That's coming through from the survey. Yet you're saying working from home means you can't just work from a coffee shop one day and then, go down to your holiday house on the coast and work from there another day. You still actually need to identify this place of work from a legal perspective. Is that right?
That's correct. That's a strict interpretation. But if we're accelerating to this new workspace, it's inevitable people are not going to be just sitting at the room at home and working. But obviously, then you've got issues that are going to come into play with sensitive information. You're going to have issues that come into play with data privacy and so forth. So that's why it's important that once you take a decision and you get employees buy-ins that you're going to be working from home, you have work from home policies and so forth, how to deal with situations when you're dealing with private personal information or when you are dealing with sensitive information. So you don't have a situation like, for example, if in the employment world, we are in a process of disciplining a CEO of company A, and we then have a situation where I'm on a conference call with, for example, Tandeka or Darren, and we're discussing the nitty-gritties with the client about how to go about such a process. And client hasn't yet notified the CEO. We're just busy discussing the pros and cons of going through the process, whether it's merits and so forth. And my 3-year-old runs, or my 7-year-old is running up and down at home. And he hears that, oh, my dad is disciplining Mr. A from company X. He goes to school and he's telling all his friends, no, my dad is a big shot. They're disciplining Mr. A from company X. Mr. A's son is sitting behind me, or grandson is sitting behind my kid at school. He goes home and he goes to go tell his father before the company has told his father. So we need to understand that all of those things come into play, and therefore it's important to have certain policies that regulate that.
Yeah.
We never needed that previously, and you might need that now before you make the move to getting employees to work from home, and breaches of those would then obviously result in some sort of disciplinary action and so forth. But they need to be made clear to the employer. The employer needs to the employer needs to make those policies clear to the employee and the repercussions. And that would obviously then leave it up to the employee on a trust relationship that, okay, I'm going to be working in such a profession, or my job requires so forth. Therefore, ordinarily, I can't go work from Litaza. I need to work from my house because I might be in breach of A, B, and C. And if later on the employer finds out that that's what happened, yes, it may be able to institute disciplinary action based on the new work from home policy that it's implemented.
Okay,
just to add on what my colleague is saying, the fascinating thing about the labor laws like the BCEA, it actually provides that you must have a place of work, but if there are various other areas that you can work at, you need to stipulate that in your contract. So it provides for flexibility in relation to employees and employers on where to work. And I think in that instance, because it provides that place of work and or any other permitted places in terms of your contract. And that has also to be stipulated in your contract of employment. And when you are looking at the changing of workplace, it's quite important, as Aslam has mentioned, that you get the consent of the employee before you change the term and condition of employment, in order for you to not find yourself in situations where your employee is referring you to the CCMA and you say, you really actually changed my terms and condition of employment because one morning you said, let's start working from home. So like you said, it is a buy-in, and it's required that employees and employers consult with each other in order to get an understanding of where now the new workplace is. Secondly, if an employee now decides to go work, for example, if I go work at Lita's place now, and I do not inform my employer that I actually not working from my household, which is X street, I can actually be disciplined for that, because now that is a misconduct, and it could actually lead to, if depending on the nature and circumstances of the breach, actually lead to a dismissible offense. Yeah.
Let's go into performance, more positive stuff. No, that's very interesting, and obviously lots to consider from a legal perspective, just from an employment side of things. Leon, you're there to maximize productivity and output. How do you see this new world, and where do you see the changes coming in? I mean, first, I think perhaps just explain what you do, and let us get an insight into your world, and then have a look at, you've got some restrictions on obviously there's some legal restrictions here, but you've got a clear indication that people want to work from home or have a kind of dual basis. How are we going to manage all of that?
Darren, I think that the process that we're going to follow is a lot less complex than what people think it is. I think let's start with performance as we see it now. Performance in organizations over the past 40 years has gone backwards, and it's a difficult item to fix. However, if we look at where we're at now, I think we're at a point where we could start fixing performance. Performance is one of those items that in the past, people in the office surroundings have been asked to look busy. That was the expectation that people had. So if you sit at your desk and you don't look busy, we're going to give you more to do, or we're going to take a route of disciplining you because you're not busy. In context where we're at now, we're going to specifically task you for a performance element. We're going to measure you in the end of the day against your delivery, and not about if you'd been busy at the workplace or if you'd look busy at the workplace. So in terms of performance, I think there's a lot that we can achieve by just looking at how we're tasking people on a remote aspect. Of course, we talk about our formula, which is half equals 2 times 3 divided by 2. So let's explain that.
Please.
So the half is about, we only see that half of the people that have full-time jobs currently will have full-time jobs in the next 5 years. It doesn't mean that there are going to be less jobs available for people. It means that people will be contracting differently. And that's where the legal fraternity will have to catch up, because this is going to be driven by corporate environments, because this is how we're going to start delivering at a next level. So that's the half. The 2 is going to be people's remuneration. They're going to actually earn twice as much as what they earn now, because they're going to be valuable. Because I'm contracted to you, I have to continuously drive to be the best. And that continuous drive to be the best is going to take me away from that desk looking busy, performing at a different level, and therefore delivering at a different level. However, the expectation is going to be for people to, the 3, be 3 times as high performance as what they are now. The interesting thing with regards to this is we did a survey, and if we 3 times more active and performing, then it will only leave us 17 minutes a day as individuals to perform every single element of what your household needs. So that's sleep, looking after the kids, preparing food, all of those things. The divided by 2 is that we'd have to unlearn and learn at a significant rate that has not yet been experienced. And that's what we do. So to explain what we do applied neuroscience in the workplace, meaning that we look at behavioral analytics. We look at why people do things, how they respond to things, and we understand the reason why. And I think that's the beauty about our jobs, is there's very little that we don't understand from a contextual point of view and understanding the fact behind why people do what they do. And we engage with organizations and individuals at that level to assist in this transgression of a contract that has been explained. So we don't have things that has replaced those contracts. We're transgressing our policies at the moment, but we're also transgressing the individual's zone of comfort in the organization, which is something that they've always relied on. And we try and bring those 3 elements together in understanding what we need to change in terms of contracts to support a new economy, a new environment, and what we need to change in terms of policies, but also how we need to support individual behavior sets so that we best support them in terms of being productive.
17 minutes, Lita. Lita's got 3 children under 5. How are you going to manage to do everything in 17 minutes?
I'm already living the 17 minutes.
I mean, you've only got 16 minutes.
Exactly.
I mean, partly from a personal point of view, your experience of this COVID thing. By the way, Leon, this is not just a COVID thing. This is a 4IR future workplace.
So we need to ask this question, if I may interrupt.
Yes, yeah.
Is this something new, or if it's something that has been expected? And I think Adrian had said it earlier on. He's been talking about this for the past 10 years. I think we're in an absolute privileged position to have things forced in a direction that brings us in line to compete with any economy in the world. And I think that's a very important point. And that's what we need to keep this momentum and not lose any of that. Because this places us as a developing third world country in a position to compete with any first world country. And I think that's the big thing that we sit with. And we need to work at that. And that's the important part about looking after the people, because that's our route to delivery. So we have to start looking at that.
Lita, perhaps, I mean, just from a personal point of view, what is your solution? I mean, with you partnered the firm, 3 young kids, what would be your optimum solution from a from a working environment? Obviously, are there parts that you've loved or parts you found challenging?
I think for me, Darren, personally, I would prefer a hybrid of both, the ability to work from home and the ability to work from the office. So pre-COVID and lockdown, I had this thing of we need to work from home, and you admire organizations that have managed to implement this, well ahead of time. And you have sort of your own ideas of how this will work practically. And then I got to work from home for a couple of months, straight from maternity leave. And I thought, you know what, no, not on a full-time basis, at least not for me, for my personal circumstances. To just get back to what Adrian had said about focus work, the majority of people in the survey said that working from home is best for them, not for me, because my kids are quite small. So the challenge is to, you can't leave them unoccupied. If there's homeschooling, I must help them with the homeschooling and take them through it so that it's into my work time. So focus work is, I'm not able to do it effectively from home. So I've really appreciated being able to get back to the office when lockdown was eased to be able to do that. And also where I'm running presentations, it's nice to do it from a controlled office environment, where another big challenge with little kids at home is keeping sort of noise levels to absolute zilch. It doesn't work. Someone will charge in, "Mommy," and you're like, "Oh my God, okay, Darren, please take the call." So those are the two challenges, looking after kids, keeping them occupied. And then the second one is obviously noise levels. And then I think the third thing as well, which has kind of creeped in when we started experiencing power cuts, it interferes with the network. If you've got telephone calls scheduled that time, I just found it's better to work with someone else in the team, so that if I have power cuts, they can carry on with the call. Because sometimes even if you have data or other means of connecting, because the power's down, the network gets interrupted, or you suddenly there's silence on my end. So I found, coming back from maternity leave, we also didn't have a nanny. We released our nanny to go and be with her family, just make sure everything is okay. So that was extreme sports on another level.
Can I interrupt just as a point of interest? Is that so? If we took the lockdown out of the equation and kids were back at school, and if you've got help at home, they were working normally. Yeah. Would it change that? Yes, I've experienced it. So when lockdown was eased, the firstborn is now back at school. The two little ones, well, they have long naps during the day. So I've got quiet time. And our nanny's freed up more because it's not 3 kids, it's like 2, and the baby sleeps most of the time. So you do have moments of quiet. But I also understand that will probably change as they begin to go to school, because then you've got the whole house to yourself. Correct. There are no noises. You don't have anything playing in the background to pacify them. So you just work effectively.
So Ndeka, that's a constraint on your personal level. But in South Africa, with our demographics and our socio-economic history, let's say, there are a lot of other challenges for a lot of other communities. So working from home for a lot of people can be very challenging as well. We were discussing earlier, what is the role of the employer in this situation? I mean, do they have an opportunity now to make an impact? What is an obligation to make an impact?
Well, I mean, an employer always has an obligation to make an impact, and not only from a social responsibility point of view, but also for the employees. Now, we in South Africa, as we all know, that we all don't come from the same backgrounds. We don't come from the same areas as well. So the Employment Equity Act, which is the law which regulates employment equity in the workplace, actually allows employers to be able to differentiate between employees and groups of employees, and to thereafter treat those employees differently in order to reach employment equity. So when employees are now moving from the traditional workspace and considering remote work, they need to bear in mind that not all employees come from the same background, and not all employees also have the same infrastructures. For March, I actually worked at home. So when I was working at home, my home is in KZN, it's in a township. One of the barriers that I experienced, I had a dongle, I had electricity, I had a laptop, but one of the issues that I had was network. I couldn't have, I could be on a call and in the next 5 minutes, there's no longer any network. And that was not because of my own doing, but it's because the infrastructure is either overloaded or they actually probably isn't any infrastructure to support the network that I'm actually using. So these are the kind of things that companies need to think of before they start implementing this work from home process. And this involves the company actually doing a profile. Currently, what is our workspace? How do we actually work in this environment? And then you need to identify certain barriers for employees who are less disadvantaged or less advantaged, and or employees in designated areas. And from there, you need to then develop plans on how are you going to be able to improve those employees' circumstances in order for them to be able to compete with the other employees. Now, depending on the financial pockets of the company, you can either enter into social responsibility programs, i.e. assist in the community that you are in with infrastructure development. Alternatively, you can do other more focused initiatives on your employees, i.e. give them dongles, increase in salary so that they can be able to get out of that work area or that home area in order to be able to compete with other employees. So it's quite important for companies to actually do that and look at the demographics in the area in which they're actually working. And this also involves the employees and employers actually sitting together and consulting and developing plans on how you're going to be able to move these employees from work from work circumstances to work from home circumstances.
Adrian, you spoke about real estate and the future of our cities. And I mean, thinking ahead, if this takes traction, we'll get back to Leon in a second and how it might happen. What do you see? I mean, if it seems that there's going to be a less need for office space, what are people going to be doing with that office space? And what will the function of the employer be if a lot of people are working from home, as a majority?
So my answer to that is going to be the same answer I've had for the last 10 years, is that historically the reason that we went to an office was because all the tools that we needed to do our work resided at the office. That no longer applies and hasn't no longer applied for many, many years. We get to do work on a bus. When you wake up in the morning, you check your phone. So we're constantly working remotely and have been for many years. But the change that's happened now is going to make people think very, very differently about the purpose of real estate. So the purpose of real estate is going to be less about there to go and get work done. It's going to be for another purpose. And the purpose is going to be more around how do you connect people to the brand, to the culture? How do you collaborate? So what it means is that the real estate is going to definitely shrink. The need for commercial real estate will shrink. There's no question of that. So I think the days of big ivory towers with shiny offices, which are a bit of an ego statement, I think those days are coming to an end. And organizations are going to be very purposeful as to how they set up their new physical world, because we still need an office. We've spoken about it, and the research backs it up, is that 80% of people want to work from home and from the office. But what's clear is that if you want to go and have focus work, people prefer working at home. So then what is the need for real estate? If you think about that, is that if we're going to remove part of the focus work out, it's then very much more about collaborative space. And it's more around the experience, because if you think about it, the commercial office is going to compete with other space, because it's not just about working from home. It's remote work. That's really what it is. It's distributed work. So people are going to work from home. They're going to work from coffee shops. They might work in little neighborhood community sectors that companies set up. And that's a whole discussion in itself. So that creates a dilemma for landlords, because there is going to be this, as leases come up for renewal, we've already seen it with clients, they're going to be re-looking how much space they require. So I think what is going to happen is that commercial buildings are going to get repurposed. There's big discussions at the moment about repurposing into other facilities that can complement commercial space. I mean, we are humans. We like to socialize. We like good coffee. We like to interact. So if offices are going to be places that people are going to want to go to, it has to be a fairly rich environment that you're going to. And it can't be this sort of monoculture environment of just people in suits going up and down in lifts is what we typically used to. I think those days are kind of over. And then the other part is probably introducing more residential, converting commercial into residential. And my analogy is we're going to go back to the days of our forefathers, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, where you end up with a far richer palette of different types of work, different types of living, all coexisting. So we've kind of tailorized the way that we work, if you think about it, or how we live. We've put old people into old age homes. We've separated where we make things from where we create things. And we really have siloed our world. And I think what's going to happen now is that this digital highway is in a way connecting everything together. So we're certainly not going to have smokestacks around the corner from where we live. But I think we certainly are going to, in this new digital world where you can print things and make things, I think there's going to be a combination of making, thinking, creating, socializing. And that is a new world. I think that as developers and architects, we've got to try and reimagine and repurpose what currently exists with its current purpose of just office space.
Fascinating. Leon, culture. I mean, how does one build culture remotely?
So, Darren, that's a complex question. And I think let's firstly start with what Adrian has just said. Adrian has said that we're not going to have large office spaces as we have currently. And as we know, we highly reliant on teams in our office spaces as we work at the moment. We always spoke about working in groups and working in teams, and we always said it's optimal working in teams. But what we've seen over the past 3 months is that those individuals functional in groups are most probably more productive than those that's reliant on the old team structure. They need to be reminded of something. They need to bounce something off a person next to them. So having that group structure in place has an impact on the culture. So suddenly culture is no longer relevant to an office building, people in suits going in lifts. Also, part of the benefit of what we've been offered right now is the fact that if you want to employ the best person for the job, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to employ from the same province or country that you run your business in. So we suddenly have become an international community of where we recruit from. And having an international community of people that we recruit from means that we have different cultures, different languages that we're now going to have to weave into our process in an organization. So from where we sit, I think the important element for building new cultures and organizations will be a strong ethical stronghold. Is do I fit in with what this organization really offers me, instead of always the look of the organization, look if the individual fits in with them. And I think this is going to be not a dilemma, this is going to be a hugely interesting area to develop over time. But there is going to be a great impact on how we define culture. But I think playing an international market would also give us the opportunity to now mold business into a much bigger culture than what we have held before. So it would be more complex, but I think a lot more exciting.
I'm going to build in on innovation and collaboration, and just getting back to Lita, her professional job is to look after innovation through intellectual property. So let's envisage a new culture where we have actually less employees and more kind of contractors. And Adrian actually not on in this discussion, but certainly referred to. And I'm a member of Liverpool. I support Liverpool. I support Mamelodi Sundowns. You're thinking of your organization more as a club, and more in that type of way, and what it can do for you, obviously. But it has some ramifications on how IP is created. I mean, maybe you want to just touch on those, if you wouldn't mind, please, Lita.
No, certainly, Darren. And that is obviously in a collaborative space where people are working as teams, bringing ideas together. From an IP perspective, all of that collaboration, you will have an end product. And it's not always easy to distinguish who owns what in the final product. So the question of ownerships becomes quite central, where you have contractors and people who come in to do a small job here or to add on or to improve the innovation. From when it started, it will have layers of intellectual property in it that could potentially belong to everybody who made a contribution to that innovation. And I think, the issue of ownership, sort of the best way to deal with it is to sort of address those things up front before you enter into this collaboration relationship, to understand who's going to be bringing what. So if I'm having a contractual relationship, what is my service that I'm offering in that? Do I need any permissions? Let's say I'm going to be doing an invention or making a contribution to innovation. From a patent perspective, at least, even if that's within the scope of my employment as a contractor, that innovation will belong to at least the patentability of that will belong to the person who contracted me to create it. However, for copyright, for example, if I'm an author, rather not an author, but I've been tasked to create something from an organization and there's no contract, arguably, I own the copyright in that copyright work that I've created. So these questions become quite important when there's works of collaboration, people coming together, bringing ideas. And I think we all know that from when something is an idea to the end product, a lot goes on in between. So if we're able to kind of identify what kinds of intellectual properties we're going to come up with during that collaboration, and map out who owns what, or rather who will be the owner of the end product. And it's easier to do that on a contractual basis.
Which gets back to what Aslam was saying about your contracts. I mean, you're going to have to rethink your employment contract. I mean, is this something
Definitely, because as we mentioned in the beginning, that our contracts were designed and our policies were designed in order to regulate a traditional workplace. A basic example of that is obviously overtime. If you look at overtime, if you're earning below a certain threshold, you are entitled to overtime in terms of the basic conditions of employment. Sometimes in an employment contract, overtime is regulated, although you might not be entitled to it in terms of the legislation, you're entitled to it in terms of your contract. Now, that is obviously manageable when you are at the workplace. It's either you have a swipe-in system or you're working together with your supervisor, so it's accountable. Your overtime, you're able to account for it. Now, obviously, when you're moving to a remote working environment, how do you monitor such things? The PCA is still there. You're still entitled to it if you're earning below a certain threshold. It's not changed. So we need to consider how do we monitor those aspects. We obviously need to remote certain things in an employment contract. For example, there's work hours, and if you're earning below a certain threshold, obviously there's certain limitations to those work hours. You got to monitor at what hours the employees are working, because you don't want them to be burning out. You don't want them to have issues that I'm entitled to in terms of the PCA. I must work a 45-hour week. Well, now that I'm at home, everything's accessible to me. I've been working a 80-hour week. Then you're in contravention of certain sections of the BCA as well. And there's various other issues as well. You might have certain types of benefits that are associated specifically to working from a work environment. Your fuel allowances, your transport allowances, your canteen allowances, those are benefits. You don't wake up in the morning and you can't just stop a benefit. There's repercussions to that. Employees can challenge you at the CCMA and so forth. And the last thing you want is to be dealing with all of those things through a transition from working from home and working remotely. And our courts haven't yet dealt with this much in so far as the working environment change from a workplace to home is considered. So all of that needs to be considered and weighed up, and then you need to seek legal advice on those issues, that I have these policies in place or I have these benefits that are in place. If I'm going to be moving, obviously I'll be saving certain costs if I remove certain benefits, but how do I go about doing it? Do I need to consult with the union? Do I need to consult with all my employees? Do I need to get the buy-in? Do I need to get an agreement? And so forth. So all of those.
Don't scrap the benefits. Keep the benefits.
These benefits, you've got to replace them. You've got to obviously modify the types of benefits. I'm doing away with this benefit, but I'm providing you with another benefit that will enable you to work from home. Because as Tandeka mentioned, the duty to provide the employer with tools to perform its work lies on the employer. And that has various repercussions. if on performance, I don't have the tools, you don't provide me with the tools. Now you want to obviously institute processes against me in order to take me to task for not performing. But I need the tools to perform. Does that change the onus on an employer and how much to provide? Does that actually increase the onus insofar as when you're doing a performance management or a performance hearing? You know, it's going to be easier for employees, obviously, to say, well, I don't have the tools. I asked for A, B, and C. So
Leon's got something to say. I can see.
Yeah, I just want to say the difficulty that we're sitting with, and Aslan, to just link on to what you just said, is not having people work from home, but this is a position where people are now going to sleep at work because people never know when to stop. So your employee sits at home and they do have kids and they lose an hour during the day, but they make up 3 hours in the evening.
Exactly.
And when is it that they stop? And that psychological effect is something that we have to look at, because people do find it difficult to stop working because there's always this guilt factor that is relevant. And also what we need to remember is that, and we previously spoke about the fact that if someone is not trained to do what is expected of them, they might not do anything, because it's easier to be blamed for not doing anything than what it is blamed for to do something that is not right. Exactly, it's the same as happening now. So if we don't have the right equipment, or we don't have the ability to perform at home, but suddenly we're forced to do it, at a point in time when there's load shedding and when I don't have connectivity and I couldn't make the phone call, might lead us to the next event that we have to set up a meeting, that we rather not do it, because we are so scared of the consequence of one of these elements impacting on it, that we stop being functional. And those are the elements that I think you're highlighting, which is very important. And what we from a cognitive perspective would look at, and how to support those individuals in settling in their environments and what they do.
Okay, very interesting. Obviously, it's a crammer. We've got only an hour really to cram this all in, and I've no question that those people listening into this will have thought of things. But before I end off, a lot of has come getting back to the survey, and Adrian, just to pivot off and end off on you, if you don't mind. A lot of the information coming out of the survey may even be self-explanatory. There might be some wow things in there, and I think we want to encourage our kind of listeners to go and look at your survey. It's going to be published. We're going to send it to those people who've come to the Crammer event, and obviously there's question time after this, which we can go and deeper dive on that. But during periods of stress, which I think COVID certainly is, people innovate. We see that in our patent department, where people come to us, they've come up with new ideas of doing things. You guys have innovated yourselves. I mean, apart from the white paper, we've got, if you've been paying attention to the background, some really cool stuff happening there. Do you want to just quickly touch on the hop, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So out of the sort of the insight that we gained from the survey, we were looking for the little cracks where we could use design as a tool to try and solve problems for people. I mean, that's what we're really passionate about, is trying to use design as an activity to try and improve people's lives or their experience of space and what they do. And what we noticed was the difficulty that people had was separating their work from their home. And, you know, when you don't think about it, but when you go to work, there's a ritual involved. You leave your door, you say goodbye to your family, you go in a car, you go public transport, you prepare yourself, you go to work. When you finish the day, you do the same thing in reverse. And your day, you switch off, you wind down, you go home, and there's this separation. Yes, you've got your cell phone, etc. But there is this ritual that happens, and it conditions you to be able to create this sort of definition between work and home. And what we saw was we wanted to try and solve a couple of problems. People had problems with space, they had problems with acoustics, they had problems with lighting, but we also wanted to try and create workspace for people where they could switch off. They could lock away, literally physically lock away their work. Now, the optimum is obviously to go out of your home, because we even found in our survey people that have studies who struggle with kids at home with the noise. The optimum, and all the research backs it up, if you can, the best thing to do is create a space. If you've got a garden, that you can physically walk out of your home, open a door and go into a space physically separated. And for that, we created Hop In, which is a structure which is made off-site, and it can be erected in 2 days. And it's designed as a product as opposed to a space. It takes care of acoustics, technology, and we were trying to tick all those boxes that people were challenged with. Because you go to an office and you just take it for granted. Everything's there. Technology is taken account of. The lighting's good. The acoustics are good. And that's what we do in our day-to-day. But there are no products that really offer that for people at home. And hence we designed Hop In. And then we designed Hop Out, which is a space-saving desk, which has got all the lighting and acoustics and storage and everything in it. But what I think is the coolest part about it is at the end of the day, you literally close the lid to your desk and you lock it. And for us, I think that's just that act allows you to say, that's my day. I've locked it away. I'm not going in there again. Because as you know, the temptation, we've all had it. On your dining room table is your laptop staring at you, say, come read the next email. And for us, we just thought that if we could combine all those elements, it could be something that could solve a lot of problems for a lot of people. And hopefully people will appreciate it.
And on that note, we can hop out. All right, talk. Thank you very much. That was excellent. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions, so stand by. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. I'm not sure if everyone can hear me, but I hope you really enjoyed that session. It's the second time I've listened to it, and once again, my brain is going nuts with various questions. We only have a limited amount of time, and there have been a number of questions. Thank you to Marlene, Stella, and Helene for posting such nice things about our Crammer event. It's really much appreciated. I also thought I'd just mention that the concept, there are some international people listening in, and they may not be familiar with this concept of load shedding. So I just thought I'd say that's basically what happens in South Africa when the lights go out. So in addition to COVID, we have this concept called load shedding, and every now and again, our lights just go out. And that's what's been referred to when we talk about load shedding. Right, I think I'm just going to draw up some of the questions here. Just bear with me. The first one actually is for Leon. Leon, I hope you can hear me, but it comes from Taryn King. It says, what do you see as the connection between working 3 times more, which is part of your fancy formula, and the experience of work if we only have 17 minutes to ourselves? How do you balance or incorporate leisure or self-development into work objectives to ensure well-rounded individual ensures good mental health and long-term productivity? And she reminds us that it is Mental Health Awareness Week.
I think, again, it's one of those complex areas. No, we're not going to end up with 17 minutes. And that's why we do surveys like that. The purpose is to find ways that our productivity can align in such a way and that we use tools and align teams to better function in the workplace or outside of the workplace as we're now at home. And therefore allow ourselves to, again, balance our life. And that's the purpose of all of this. So, no, you're not going to end up with 17 minutes. We need to become more clever in how we do these things, and therefore smart organizations is going to lead the way in terms of finding new ways of raising productivity and allowing people still to have a life outside of work.
That's great. And just to carry on from that, I mean, you talked about our competitive advantage, I guess, or an advantage of being at the bottom of the continent, so to speak, at the bottom of the world, but really now taking our place amongst global competition for skills. How do you see us as a workforce in general with our ability to compete in that market?
I think we see that there will be a shift, and there's a lot of debate about this, but if I'm a contractor to an organization, the responsibility or the accountability to unlearn and learn as quick as I can so that I keep within the market of being able to sell my skills will allow me to go and find that what is best for me to apply in the workplace. And therefore, the emphasis will change in how we develop ourselves. We're going to have people finding what it is that is the best, and therefore, as we know, universities at the moment would have to re-look how they embark on new courses and how they get to the individual quick enough so that they could use that product that they've launched. We see that there are huge online universities that allow people to train a lot faster and to focus on specific skills. So productivity is going to be aligned to my own ability to unlearn and learn, and it's going to be about how I engage with my environment so that I can keep up to date with that as what is responsible in terms of delivery, just at that 17-minute mark.
Excellent. Thanks, Leon. I mean, I've just been reminded that there are only a short time period for questions. So let me move on to Adrian very quickly. Fascinating, Adrian, for that. I mean, Leon, for that. Do you see a new workplace design formula that will take into account and allow for those people who prefer and elect to work in the office to have spaces in the office that will be conducive to working with colleagues and clients who are working remotely in a virtual environment? Does that make sense? Do you want to repeat that?
No, it makes sense to me. Yes, definitely. I think, the future of work really is around the one word, and that's called choice. I term the new workplace or the office is a hybrid model where historically we only worked in one place. Now we're going to have distributed teams working either from home or different geographical locations. So the workplace, the office, is certainly going to have to cater for those people who want to spend a day or two or every day. Some people's roles will require that they sit in a hub, which will be the main office to support other people who are distributed remotely. And I think there's also going to be a development of, and these are discussions we've had with clients on a hub and spoke model where you have regional offices, smaller pilot offices, and then what you create is a mirror room or a training area or collaborative area, which has got a mirror in terms of the way the room is built and kitted out with technology that allows teams to seamlessly interact with, let's say, a digital whiteboard on one side, digital whiteboard on the other. And it allows teams that are remote to connect as if they were in the same place. So I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all approach to offices. I think every client who's got a different way of work, different industry, are going to curate their space. But I think that people can be a lot more intentional about the types of facilities that they create within those spaces, and they're going to curate them to suit how they get work done. If they are in manufacturing or hospitality or legal, they'll all be slightly different. But I think the way that we view the office as being the only place where you can get work done is the big change. And we're going to see ourselves as saying we can get work done in distributed teams. And how do we use the office as a hub to best connect everybody together to be able to be as productive as possible?
Sure. Sounds quite liberating, actually. Thank you, Adrian. There have been a number of questions, and I'm going to focus on you, if you don't mind, Thandeka, and get into the employment side, and then over to you, Aslam. But this one talks about, and you touched on it in your discussion, but it says the survey places substantial emphasis on the majority view, noting that 80% prefer working from a home or a combination of both. Lita and Thandeka both pointed to more nuanced needs of employees, noting the sentiments of the economic EEA, maybe you can quickly explain that for international visitors, considering a holistic approach to employment needs. What would the employee's obligation be for the employee that falls beyond the majority of the status quo of the survey? Is perhaps a further inquiry necessary? And I just would like you to just focus on, I don't think it's about the status quo of the majority, but what came out in that survey are difficulties with certain people working from home. And maybe, again, just talk about, or answer the question and obviously talk about then what obligation does an employer have in this, and perhaps the government?
Thank you, Darren, for the question.
When we look at the kind of economic environment that we're living in, it's quite important for employers to also recognize and also understand that not all of the employees are coming from the same background, and as I have previously mentioned. And when you are considering the barriers, the companies must only do what is reasonably that they can reasonably accommodate these employees to be able to work. And it's not quite necessary for, there probably might be extra steps that companies need to take, but they need to look at their own pockets in order to be able to assist these companies, to assist these employees. Sorry about that. But in general, what we currently see is that we need infrastructural development, which includes networks. Not all employees have access to certain networks. Not all employees have access to electricity. And like we said, we need companies to now start working with government. And as government cannot only accommodate everybody. So we need to start seeing a lot of social responsibilities from companies to be able to assist these people from disadvantaged environments to be able to also be able to compete in the new way of work.
Great. I think you touched on it, but CSI is not just a spend, it actually drives profit as well. I think that's a good point. Aslam, very quickly on you. What happens if you can't get agreement with employees? What do you do then? I mean, if you want to change your contract and now you need agreement, what are the steps available? Just very quickly, please. Looks like he's on mute. My favorite thing there. There you go. He's off.
Thank you, Darren. It's always advisable that the employer and employee should try to reach some sort of agreement, because if obviously parties cannot reach an agreement to the changes in terms and conditions of employment and there's an operational need for that change, the company can obviously then institute retrenchment proceedings, which may then result in the employee becoming unemployed. So it's always advisable, firstly, to try to reach an agreement, because the company could lose valuable and good employees, and at the same time, the employee could be unemployed. So there is those steps that can be followed, provided there's a valid operational need. But importantly, parties should try to reach some kind of middle ground in an agreement.
Excellent. Thank you. And last but not least, a quick one I can't leave Lita out on we've asked everyone a question. Lita, tell us why the trademark HOP is such a good trademark.
Thank you, Darren. It's a great trademark because it tells you something about what the product is without giving it away. So it's great because it's not descriptive. And it's great because it is an acronym for what the product is about. So I think, it's a wonderful trademark. And as trademark lawyers, we love trademarks that are suggestive, that are not descriptive. And we can hop in and out of the office space that Adrian and his team create for us.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm going to use it again, but we're hopping out of our main panel discussion into the unusual segments section. Thank you once again very much to our panelists. Of course, we are available throughout the day. Tomorrow, I'm going to be wrapping up the session tomorrow, so if there are any questions, please put them through. We'll do our best to get in touch with you. Have a look at that survey. adams.africa/Crammer/survey. Working with architects and designers make it visually very, very appealing. So it's not going to be a whole lot of text and graphs and such and etc. It's a great read. Please do have a look at that. And then I guess if we can just turn over to our first unusual story.
I'm Tom Kritzinger. I'm the export and Basotho blanket manager at Aranda. Aranda has been producing blankets and throws of the finest quality for no less than 67 years. The state-of-the-art factory spans 11 soccer fields under roof. Then it happened. The Black Swan event of 2020, COVID-19, that caught the entire world off guard. Nobody expected this event to disrupt life as we knew it. All of a sudden, it felt like the world had come to an end. Aranda had to navigate the biggest storm in its life. We had to keep focus on our long-term objectives and not get distracted by the raging storm of COVID-19. In the midst of the storm, an opportunity presented itself to market to the US consumer the Basotho blankets with a successful American online retailer. This is when we had to call on our friends Darren and Maureen at Adams & Adams to secure the intellectual property rights attached to the Basotho blankets in the USA. In the eye of the storm, we managed to enter into a 5-year agreement with our American online distributor. So what is the moral of the story? There's always light at the end of the tunnel. We're all in this together. Just look for the light. Thank you.
Very inspiring words, and thank you very much for the plug there, Tom. Those Basuto blankets are absolutely beautiful. Our second story comes from Grahamstown. Let's have a look at the Grahamstown project.
Hello, my name is Graham Holmes, the founder of the Grahamstown project. I've been back in Grahamstown for 3 years now and absolutely love it. Grahamstown is a microcosm of South Africa. Many of the problems and thorny issues in our country today have their origins right here in Grahamstown. The Grahamstown project is a social business. We take an interest in the community, our troubled history, and the politics of the day.
But when they give me a job, I'm a hard worker, I can work. But the problem is, is this Corona, COVID-19, and there is no work here in Grahamstown.
Our social business model incorporates an entrepreneur and trade skills training hub with our British charity partners, Kanya. Kanya's motto is building skills for life. We promote tourism in Grahamstown and offer tours and talks. And thirdly, we have an online shop, a sales platform for the people of Grahamstown to sell high-quality products. Our mission is to create work and income-earning opportunities for people in Grahamstown and to draw money into Grahamstown. Visit our website and please, most importantly, come and visit us. We'd love to show you around. Best wishes from Grahamstown.
Well, who wants to go to Grahamstown? I do, certainly now anyway. And finally, I think really on an inspiring note, we come back to some virtual tours in Johannesburg. Let's turn over to Frank, see what he's doing.
Hi guys, Frank here from Honest Travel Experience, and we are a tour and experiences company based in Johannesburg and Cape Town. Our unusual stories of how we are able to still offer our tours through Zoom, which led to us creating our virtual experiences. Virtual experiences are a new way and cool way for people to be able to explore in the comfort of their own home. If you'd like to see some of the experiences that we have, please check out our website, www.honesttravelexperience.com.
Is the next session of the Crammer. Thanda will be taking us through his session on force majeure contracts and a whole lot of other interesting aspects. I hope to see you there tomorrow. And we'll, of course, wrap up. Please send those questions through. Thanks again to the panel.